to know your history is a priority. You must know your history. Person in black history. Quickly, let's go. Who? Martin Luther King. You.
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X. You. Rosa Parks. You. Yeah.
Haile Selassie I.
Thank you very much. And tell us who he is.
The Emperor of Ethiopia.
The Emperor of Ethiopia. Thank you. Young man.
Jackie Robinson.
Jackie Robinson.
Carter G. Woodson.
Carter G. Woodson.
Langston Hughes.
Say again?
Langston Hughes.
Langston Hughes.
Chuck Berry.
Chuck Berry. Very good.
George Washington Carver.
George Washington Carver. Now, with the exception of one,
And Jesus Christ.
and Jesus Christ. With the exception of two, thank you very much. Let's give a hand for Jesus Christ. Amen to that. With the exception of the two that a very conscious man, Yahya, put out to us, we talked about black history from slavery on. Men, young men, black history started in the beginning, the very beginning. Before we know anything, black was there. Moses left Egypt. Now, by 1000 BC, we get to David and Goliath. So David comes to his age around 1000 BC, 1,000 years before Christ. And the line of David, the Hebrews, goes on to the birth of Christ. So now we're in the age of Jesus. Now again, I challenge you to think about what is the image that comes to your mind when you think of Jesus. For me, I went to church in Indianapolis, and every Sunday I looked at a 6-foot-tall picture of a white Jesus with brown hair and blue eyes. And so I challenge you to recognize that as a deception in terms of Jesus' image. Jesus looked like us. He was in our image. It's okay to have that image of yourself in a godly way, because if you have the image of somebody else as your God, you're under their control. Question?
I just wanted to say that I always thought that it was a white Jesus until I was reading and my dad got me and my brother a book, and it was called Devo for Boys. It was by Ed something, I forget his last name. And it was a devotion. It was about Jesus. And in the corner, it had a scripture, and it was talking about the looks of Jesus Christ. So I grabbed my Bible, I opened it up, and I forget what chapter it was in, but I looked up the scripture, and it told me like the whole entire description from head to toe of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, I know it's in Revelation, it talks about he has woolly hair, and his feet are burned bronze. And that's our color and our hair. And so that's what the Bible tells us. And again, you have to be careful to discern what the Bible tells you, what history tells you, and what Hollywood tells you. And Hollywood is a deception, but it's okay because they're artists. Nobody told Hollywood they have to tell the truth. You tell your story in Hollywood, but know your history. Don't be lazy and get fed and sit back there and consume what you see on television and take that for the truth. Know your history. Now, in 70 AD, there was the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. This was like 40 years after he died, and the Hebrews dispersed all over the place. They dispersed up to northern Africa, into Spain, developed great civilizations there. They dispersed south into Africa, into West Africa, to Ghana, to East Africa, Timbuktu. And Timbuktu in like the 1500s was this great university and just this great civilization, while Europe was in the Dark Ages. They were literally still living in caves and had no sewer or lights. And Timbuktu in Africa was thriving. And that's because we had the technology, we had the know-how. But then somehow along the way, by 1450, slavery occurred. So now we're into your history. Now I'm bridging you into what we know as black history from slavery on. Now it makes you wonder, there's a very good possibility that some of us are Hebrews, because there were Hebrews all in West Africa when they started to take the slaves away and packed us in these ships and dehumanized us and went across the great Atlantic from Africa to the United States. And then we get there, and it's a whole new world. Everything in terms of our culture, our religion, our principles are taken from us. We're branded, our women are raped, our men are whipped and castrated. We're terrorized, traumatized. Question.
Why did the Europeans travel to the United States and saying that they founded this country? After that, they came to Africa and saying that we needed to go to America. And from now, why are they hating on us? And I literally don't get that, because I say in my mind, why would you hate on us and you're the ones that brought us here?
That's a good question. Right after slavery, they're elected. We're making progress. We're making great progress. So what do you think happens when people see black folks making great progress? Oh, not today. The Compromise of 1877, where the North made a deal with the South that they would take the Union Army out of the South, which was protecting black folks and enabling them to vote and build their jobs, build their homes. They agreed to remove the protection that the Union Army gave to us. And so then the white Southerners could then just go in and do what they do. No, you ain't voting. No, you ain't getting elected. No, you can't buy this property. That was the compromise that was made in exchange for, I forgot the president that got elected, but that was the deal that he made. And so because of that, we had Jim Crow laws that restricted our growth and our being able to elect folks to office. However, we kept thriving. People like Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, they came to the front. They were inventors. They were philosophers. They were leaders in our community. So our greatness would not be put out. Black Wall Street. Anybody heard about Black Wall Street? Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's unbelievable. I drove out there last summer. We had banks, theaters, schools, churches, grocery stores, post office that we owned in this city. It was our own city, literally. I saw the buildings, great old buildings, brick buildings, a great town, all built and owned and designed and run by black folks. Totally independent, totally sustainable on its own. Growth, thriving. What do you think happened to Black Wall Street? Burnt down, bombed, torched. Yes?
It's funny that they say it was a riot. It wasn't actually so much a riot. It was actually kind of a terrorist attack.
Yes.
It wasn't, we weren't in the streets looting our own businesses, and we were kind of invaded. And all that our ancestors built was pretty much burned down. Pretty messed up.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I don't want to get into that history, but know the dynamics, the success of collectively working together, and what can happen when you're seen as a threat. You have to understand that. These events, they fed into our ancestors' psyche. Fear starts to creep in, that if you do something collectively and successfully, something is going to happen to you. And so we have to understand that mentality, but we have to be brave and have courage and to keep moving forward and to keep moving forward collectively. So now we're dealing with Jim Crow, segregation in the 50s and the 60s. And now we're rising again. We're rising again to fight against Jim Crow, segregation, schools, housing, voting. We're fighting again. My parents, your grandparents, and some of y'all's great-grandparents sacrificed. They sacrificed their lives, their homes, their livelihood, so that we could have the right to vote, to live anywhere we want, to the option to go to school, to play tennis here in the hood or play tennis in Beverly Hills. They sacrificed their life for those rights. Rosa Parks, who saw the movie Selma? Great film, great film. That is truth. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, although we saw them as different philosophies, these were men who were committed and who gave their lives for our freedom so that our minds could be freed, so that we could physically go where we wanted to go. Yes?
I made a comment about the last one, the last slide.
Oh, you want to comment on it?
Yeah, actually my mom, she was with her mom. They were actually going home from one of the riots. She was actually 4. So I think that was 1967. They were going home. That's like when literally the whole town was shut down where she was.
Uh-huh.
And a nail got into her arm and right here.
Yeah?
And she was really badly bruised from one of the fire hoses.
Yeah.
She was telling me stories how she sacrificed with her mom.
That was real. I think that's what Selma really showed to me, is people were willing to sacrifice their lives, their body, and we don't do that. When's the last time one of us got out in the streets even to march? I marched, by the way, last Saturday for Menformation. Sorry. and we got to do more of that. 1960s. The 1960s were just such a great time of activism where we stood up. We stood up with our civic leaders. We stood up with our entertainers. James Brown, Say It Loud, I'm black and I'm proud. I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. We had a mentality of consciousness and working together in the 60s. We were moving, we were working together. The athletes were willing to sacrifice. John Carlos and Tommy Smith, they're only now getting recognition for the sacrifices they made. They gave up their fame and fortune, winning gold in the Olympics and making this statement. What do you think happened to them when they came back to the United States? They were punished. They were forgotten. Those kinds of things place fear in us, and you wonder why we don't do it anymore. All the way back then, 1968, people still scared. Y'all can't be scared anymore. This is time to move. This is your time. Muhammad Ali gave up his belt because he refused to go to the war and fight in Vietnam. He said, ain't no Vietnamese never called me a nigger. And he didn't go. He gave up his belt. How many athletes are giving up anything right now? How many athletes are saying anything about what's going on? Finally, we get something to wear an I Can't Breathe t-shirt. We've been killing ourselves for decades, and nobody's standing up that has all kinds of money. They're just continuing to develop and produce stuff that we consume that just rots us, decays us. So we get to the era of the 70s and the 80s, and look what happens. 1968, Martin Luther King is killed. We lose a great hero. In April. In June of 1968, Robert Kennedy is killed. That was something happened in 1968 that planted more seeds of fear in us as black men. And as a result, we started chasing the money. I think we were integrated into society in the late 60s, and we started chasing the money. We started adapting their culture. And look what happens when you start to adapt their culture and want to be like them, want to have their money. You take their money and you don't say anything about who we are. So what happens when we don't have that consciousness? Well, you start to worship the thug life, gangster rap. Negativity is all of a sudden positive. That's what you want to be like. You want to be like Biggie. You want to be like Tupac. You want to talk like them. You want to act like them. Biggie and Tupac are the Martin Luther King and Malcolm X of the next generation. That's the value system that we adopted once we integrated into the society. NWA, gangster rap, since 1989, that just has seemed to just take over our society and the way we talk and the way we relate to our children and the way you guys think you should act as young men. You should use the B word, you should use the N word, you should use the MF, you should smoke weed, you should drink. What happened to I don't want nobody to give me nothing, open up the door, I'll get it myself. And then 2008, here we are. Barack Obama gets elected. 2008, who thought that would ever happen? A black president. That's right. And we did it. We did it because we collectively worked together, we voted, we supported him, and he has represented as a strong, you've got to be a strong black man. You would certainly have, everybody has their own political opinion about President Obama, but I can tell you when he's going to go down in history as a great black man. And I believe that he is going to inspire many of you to become a president, become a senator, become an architect, to become anything you want to be. But how does that relate to today, where we are with our pants and our tats and our guns and our music? How does that relate? Yes.
As we became the barbarians, we took their barbarianism and they took our empire. So we just traded places.
Good one, bro. Good one, man.
They realized the greatness. That's what they're scared of. And we accepted the old traditions of them, attack people, be bold, be strong. It wasn't about being strong, it was about being smart, being harmony, loving, you know what I'm saying, making things happen. Now, a few tribes messed that up, but it's known from Europe, this barbarianism, terrorism. Terrorism is not a term from black.
No.
The term love and stuff come from black.
That's right.
But now, we switch places.
And that's the question. How do we go from senators and congressmen to barbarians? I believe that fear plays a role in it, and I also believe that ignorance, not knowing your history, plays a huge role in it.
If you don't respect yourself,